Hello and welcome to Wave Support. I see from your clinical request you have a patient that you're transitioning from soft toric lenses into gas perm lenses and you're struggling a little bit with the comfort. Well, let's take a look and see how we're doing here. First of all, your topographies look great, and if I look at your design here, we'll look at this right eye first. The design actually looks really good. Now, you don't have very much corneal cylinder, so it makes sense to try to go with a RSIM design. However, one of the things you'll find is that going from a soft lens that's big, doesn't move a whole lot, and fits very closely to the cornea, when you go to a rigid piece of plastic, if you don't get a really nice snug fit along that eye, you're probably going to get more awareness with that. So my guess is that some of your comfort issues probably stem from the fact that you got this rigid piece of plastic bumping into things. So if you look here for a moment, this design actually looks very nice, but since you are having comfort issues, what I would probably work on is trying to somehow get this peripheral area to line a little more closely with the cornea. Now, if you look at it, this 20 micron line is sort of what we use as, sort of the benchmark for edge lift. And if you look right here in this meridian, you've got some touch down here. You got this little bit of a down turner, as I call it. And you get up here, you still have it, but when you get up over to this other side, all of a sudden you lift up quite a bit. And in relation to the cornea, you get up over here, you even get over that 20 micron line. So you got quite a bit of a difference between this side of the cornea and the other side. Now, granted, we don't have all the data out here at the very edges, but if you could sort of see where you've got a little bit of difference in the two sides here. So one way to get around that, if you want to stay with an on-cornea design, if you want to get these areas to line more closely in an RSIM design, you'd probably have to go down to a little smaller diameter that just kind of hugs this area right here. But unfortunately, as you know, if you're coming from a large diameter soft lens, that's probably going to not be the perfect answer. It's nice to keep these lenses large, so even though you don't have a whole lot of corneal toricity centrally, I would probably recommend that you try to somehow match this lens around. So you look at G-SIM. In those cases where I have some comfort issues, I go right to Freeform, and then just try to lay that lens down all the way around. Now I made up a little example of a lens here. This lens I kept the same diameter, everything else the same. I just clicked over to Freeform and let Wave design the lens. And you'll see now, at least in a theoretical sense, we've got a lens that very clearly matches the topography all the way around. So you got a very close fitting lens. We got a little bit of edge lift on this top side for a tear pump, but you got a very nice lens. So this lens should fit, probably give you a little less awareness just because it's hugging a little bit more closely. These lenses you want to keep a little bit snug. The axial is a good design modality. One thing you'll find is if you have a lot of awareness out here in the peripheral part, don't be afraid to fit in tangential mode. You may recall that axial mode represents the central part of the cornea more precisely and more estimates the peripheral part, whereas tangential tends to look very closely at these peripheral parts of the cornea, and you get a lens that's almost a little bit flatter with that. So just keep that in mind when you're designing. So I'd consider going that Freeform in this particular lens. If we look at your left lens, same thing. If we look here, very nicely designed, and you see we went with the G-SIM to try to account for that difference in the corneal toricity. But I think what we're really running into this lens a little bit more, I'm going to go a little bit larger, is the fact that you have a little displaced optical zone in this lower right-hand design here. This it's a little bit more irregular shape down here. So again, you may have to go to more of a freeform design, because if you click around these meridians, you got a downturner. You're probably digging into the cornea over here. Meanwhile, you've got it lifting up quite a bit over here. So you got quite a bit of disparity in that shape. And so what I'd probably do is just try to get that lens fitting more closely. So if you switch over to Freeform once again on this lens, and I'll click over, we've got a little mock-up of a lens here. Freeform, if you'll notice now, I'm going to take this out of here for a second. If we just click on Freeform, you'll see we got a pretty closely matched lens design. This lower left diagram is the back surface of the lens as it relates to this corneal topography. And if you look down here in the right-hand corner, there's this little box with the 00 next to the S. That's click for a sphericity of the optical zone. So a lot of Wave designers like that. If you click on that, now you'll notice that this lens, if I let Wave redesign it, you're going to find that this back surface of this lens now almost perfectly matches that cornea. So it's another little tool that you sometimes can use to kind of make these lenses more comfortable. Keep in mind when you click on this little asphericity box, it flattens the lens a little bit overall. Now another thought, if you haven't tried them yet, is going to a little bit more of a semi-scleral design. And a lot of the docs, wave docs, are having a lot of success either going with a partially like a smaller semi-scleral design, where it's actually more of almost a corneal touch that lands at about 14.5 millimeters. This gives you a lens that's very similar in size to a soft toric lens, so it's the patient's familiar with this size lens. A lot of docs like to go to a full sclera up around 16.5 millimeters. I tend to like to try to start in these areas because the lens is usually a little easier to handle. And I've mocked up a lens using sort of the Wave 8-point process for designing one of these semi-scleral lenses. And in case you haven't seen it, there's a nice video on the Wave website that shows you walks you through step by step on how to design one of these lenses. I did use a free-form modality just to try to get this lens fitting really nicely on here. But once again, if you'd like to see this, I'll leave a link to this website or the training videos for your reference. So to summarize that, I think the lens designs are looking pretty good overall, but what I would try to do, once again, is try to get those lenses a little bit more nicely matched to that green corneal line. And if we go back to your first design, if I have it here somewhere. Yeah, I think I already closed out of that one. So if we go, even if we click back over here to just the RSIM, you'll notice we get a lens that has a lot of variance between that in this landing zone between all the different meridians. And so getting that a little bit more closely aligned by using that current settings design should create a nicely fitting lens that now is much more closely aligned with the cornea. So with that said, I wish you well with this case. Sometimes these transitions from the soft to the rigid lens can be a little difficult, as you know, but don't get discouraged, and thank you for contacting Wave Support. Have a great day.